And the question before all of us at every moment is, what will we do to push us in the right direction? Rather than voters being able to pick the politicians are trying to cherry pick their voters. Politicians in my home state and all across America, in their craven lust for power, have launched a full-fledged assault on voting rights. They are focused on winning at any cost, even the cost of the democracy itself. And I submit that it is the job of each citizen to stand up for the voting rights of every citizen.
Anyways, okay, hi, this is Beth.
And I'm Stainy.
And you're listening to Mixed Politics. Welcome to episode 5.
Is it?
Stainy, what are we drinking?
Oh, well, I am drinking. Yeah? You always ask me, what are we drinking? Like we are drinking the same thing. We don't ever drink the same thing. I'm drinking a vodka mango twist. It literally just has vodka and mango juice with an assortment of other little fruits. And that's cool. That's what I'm going to be doing tonight. What are you drinking?
Okay. I am drinking water because I feel like garbage. I got dose 1 of the Pfizer COVID vaccine yesterday, and I just don't think my body could handle alcohol right now with the way I'm feeling. It's pretty bad. A lot of people don't have a bad reaction to dose 1, but I'm that person who has a bad reaction to dose 1. So,
well, I guess I'm drinking for 2.
Yes, you're drinking for 2 tonight, but I will do my best to make it through without being too boring.
All right. So what are we talking about tonight?
Tonight, what's up with voter suppression?
What's going on with it?
Yeah, this is a hot topic because it's all the rage, talking about voter integrity. So we're going to break it down. Well, I'm going to let you kick it off because this was kind of something you were passionate about us talking about this week. So what got you onto the topic of voter suppression?
I just think it's next in the chain of what's important. Because we have, it's not like we have elections coming up right now, but the assault that is going on our voting process is a very big deal because, not everywhere in the country has not everywhere in the world has free and fair elections. And it's one of the things that's like as American as apple pie. And, it's the way it's being assaulted right now. It might be not what we would hope it would have been when voting for everyone became a thing.
It's kind of always been a thing, though, for voter suppression. Because if you think back to just the beginning of this country, you and I identify as 2 types of people who at one point or another, until just recently, we were deemed as not worthy of voting. I'm a woman, you're a black man. So basically, till relatively recently,
what would be?
It wasn't seen as a necessity for us to vote.
On top of that, too, in the inception of it, even if we were to change those things where neither of us were black and you weren't a woman, you still couldn't vote because you had to own land.
Right.
And if you didn't own land,
there was always
wow. Yeah.
Yes.
So
there was always a method of voter suppression, just in various forms, never really called that until now. But there was always a measure for somebody to be excluded from voting. Yet at the same time, Americans tend to say that we are this free country where everybody can vote. It's really not true. It's never been true.
It's never been true.
It's just never been true. So I'd like to see us get to a point where it is actually true. So maybe this discussion will help us to spread the word on awareness of the fact that we are not, in fact, letting people vote who should be eligible to vote. But also, what do we do? What do we recognize when voter suppression is happening? How do we know that that's what it is?
Since we started off with going back to the shack, the voting age, there's a lot of things that has changed over since the inception of America in terms of our laws and constitution and voting and whatever. And voting has changed too. Voting hasn't just been. It's kind of weird until you start to learn about something. You kind of just have this general idea that everybody can vote. If you're American, then you vote. That's your right. And they drill it into your head. It's your right as an American. And then people make you feel bad too.
Right.
Like, you didn't vote. Well, you're not being a model citizen if you didn't care enough about whatever issues or whatever. But it's never ever been the situation in America where everyone could just vote freely. That's just never been a thing, as you said before. So let's start with voting age. What's the issue with that? And when did that start? And when did that change? And what happened to it?
Well, it used to be that the voting age was 21. And in the 1970s, there was a public sentiment, especially because a lot of young men aged 18 to 20 were going off to fight in the Vietnam War.
Mm.
And so the public sentiment eventually got to the point where they said, well, if I'm 18 years old and I'm old enough to fight for this country, then I should be old enough to elect the people who make the decisions about whether I have to fight, which makes perfect sense. And I'm glad that they put it in those terms and that the public was like, yeah, you're right. So the voting age nationwide was changed to 18.
Wow.
Nowadays, people see arbitrary limits in who should be able to vote, just like pre-Vietnam. This arbitrary age of 21 was used. Nowadays, I think that we're kind of settling back into that, where we have these arbitrary rules of who is allowed to vote, but people aren't seeing it in that light just yet. So
American laws have just always just been arbitrary, and like it'll make 50% of it make sense. No, I'm serious, because all right, you just pointed out, you're like, the argument that people use to change this law about voting age is that I'm old enough to fight for this country, so I should be able to vote for whoever is sending me to go fight. Makes perfect sense.
right.
So at 18 years old, we send you off with your fresh voting rights to Vietnam, and like,
Yes.
you go over there and you're doing your thing, whatever the government and corporation wants you to do. And at night, you're like, all right, boom, you do your thing. You have your drink with your buddies and your friends and whatever. And let's say you're one of the lucky guys that get to come back from the war. And you come back and, big parade in
Right.
New York, and, you get to kiss the girl and all that. And it's like, all right, let's go to a bar and drink. Ho ho. Hold on there, Private
Oh,
Johnson.
sorry.
You can't drink. You're
Yeah.
about 19 years old. You can vote, you can fight, you can die, but you can't drink. This is me laughing in Canadian. Ah, I'm telling you, some of it just doesn't make any sense. Like, just like they don't look at
Right.
the rule and be like,
Right.
okay, well, we changed this one, so all these other ones have to change too. Like the
Right.
ramification. They're just like,
That's
well,
the
we've
thing.
changed
The
this
due
one.
diligence.
The end. It's like, man,
Yes.
thank you for going and fighting.
The,
I'm gonna drink this beer. You need to stay
right.
outside.
And now the reverse. Yeah. It's like the reverse is bad. This one's bad. Like it's all bad.
It's all bad.
If you're 18, you can go fight, and now you can vote, but you can't drink. It's like,
Yep.
what?
Yep. Which
But so back when the drinking age changed, the reason was because too many people in college who weren't mature enough were getting drunk all the time.
yeah.
But there's a reason. There's a reason behind all that. Just making the drinking age 21 doesn't fix the root cause.
Yeah.
Because I'm gonna clue you in. People still drink under the age of 21. So it just doesn't make any sense.
So we've covered land, gender or sex, and I guess race, and then age. Was there any other thing that you can remember of in like history in terms of voting where something else had to be ridiculously changed? Because I guess removing the land ownership requirement, because that couldn't stand. But any other thing that you could think of?
Well, I think that you had mentioned this, that voter registration in itself. What do you think about that?
Voter registration apparently could not have been a thing at the inception of the country. I don't think when
How come?
I don't because it's not in the Constitution. It's not. There's
No, it's
nothing
not. But
in the Constitution
individual
about voter or registering to vote with a
but
city or state or county. There's none of that. So I'm saying that was not one of the founding fathers' intention, that you would have to register, because if it was their intention,
Mhm.
or if it were their intention, it would have been in the Constitution. And I love that argument. It's one of the most popular arguments in America, where you start the argument with, well, the founding fathers. It's like, I love where this is going. Every time I hear that, I'm
Yes,
like, yep,
that's a really
I'm
good
in.
point.
So if we want to be constitute, because some people are about that. If we want to be, to
Yes,
the letter of the Constitution, voter registration is unconstitutional because it's not in there.
yes,
It's
right.
not in there.
No, you're right about that. So you're just looking at what were the constitutionally invoked restrictions on people. I think we covered them
Yeah,
all. I
yeah.
do.
Now, as far as voter registration goes, a lot of people have this view, and I also take this controversial view. Maybe it might be controversial for some people, that voter registration is voter suppression. Just is completely, all of it is voter suppression. And the reason is, I mean, there's so many reasons. If you just look at it, it's like, well, you're trying to get some people to not vote. That's what
Yes.
you're doing with the registration.
You
So if in doing that, you're trying to
right.
suppress people's inalienable right, or right as a citizen to vote. And the opposite is so funny, because you have other countries that don't have voter registration. They don't.
Right.
One of them is our friends to the north. I pointed up. That's up.
The Canadians that are laughing at
Yeah,
us.
because they don't have voter registration. They don't. And obviously they have a parliamentary system that's different from ours. But whenever an election is called, they just go vote. Like, they show up with a number that is synonymous to our social security number. Like, in some countries, like I know another
Mhm.
country, they call the number the TRN, tax registration number, whatever it is. You have a
Yes.
number that's saying that you belong to this nation. And then, in whatever computer system, they can say either this person is a resident, or a resident alien, or a citizen, or a veteran, or a whatever. They have that. So when the election is called in Canada, people just show up to the polling station, whatever, and be like, this is my number, and I'm voting for these things, or whatever. And it's seamless. Like, they don't, in other countries, election day is a holiday, so that everyone can go vote, like, paid.
Right.
And here, all you see is just roadblock after roadblock, starting with registration. I don't see how you could drill into people's heads that it is your right, your biggest right as an American, to choose your representative in our government. And the only way you can do that is to vote, and then require people to register for that right. That sounds absolutely ridiculous
I
to me.
Let me play devil's advocate, because I think that the reason that registration could be necessary,
Go on.
that sets us apart from other countries, is because we have 50 different states
Mm-hmm.
and some additional territories that all have different ways of voting, because most of the elections are statewide.
Mm-hmm.
The only time we vote in the federal level is every 4 years for president.
Yeah.
That's it. Everything else is going to be at a statewide level or county level or city level. So I think that registration, maybe some states can stop doing it if they want to, but I don't think we can get to a point of nationalizing the standards of voting, because of the fact that we're not just we're a nation of states.
That's
So
one of the
each state
that's
has
one
the
of the
right to set their own
biggest
rules.
problems in this country. And I know people love it and celebrate it, but, like, I think I don't know if the bad outweighs the good, or if it's equal, but being a nation of 50 different nations is annoying as shit.
Yeah.
And, like,
Well,
just
it is. Yeah.
your practical life, where it's like, you can't look at a situation and be like, this is the law in America. No, this is the law in Florida. Stand your ground. This is the
Yes.
law in Michigan. Oh, marijuana is legal.
Yes.
This is the law in, Missouri, or whatever. And it's like, it's so weird.
Right.
You know what? Everyone can attest to this. It makes traveling difficult. It does.
Yes.
I have friends who go to Michigan and just walk in the store and just buy marijuana. The minute the minute that they enter Ohio on the same highway, just crossing the line for the state, they could be felons if caught.
They are committing a crime.
So just by
They're
driving down the
transporting
street.
they're transporting illegal substances over state lines. That is a
Ay,
crime.
ay, ay. Ay.
Right. So that's the thing. I just want to keep that in mind that it's probably not going to be feasible for us. And I don't think it would be wise for us to nationalize the standards of voting
Mhm.
when really the only national voting we do is every 4 years. And in between that, every year or several times a year, cities and counties and states have their own elections. So I don't think we can set a standard that will make 50 states' elections abide by the rules of something that happens every 4 years at
I
the
think we
nationwide
can.
level.
I think we can. Since Trump's election, Trump's election. I say it like he won. But it was his election.
Since the
See,
2020
it was
election.
his election. He was the only one campaigning. He was the only one, making a big stink while everybody was just waiting.
Hmm.
Yeah. So since the
Yeah.
last election, since his election lies and his lies about fraud and integrity or whatever, that has caused a push for over 280 different legislations being put forth by state governments and local governments to get passed, and all of it is
Yeah.
centered around the fact that Trump said there was fraud, there was widespread fraud and whatever. And I'll hasten to remind all of you guys that in about 64 court cases were all thrown out because none of them had any standing or any merit, and it was a lot of them were just insulting to people who have put their life, their life's work is the law. And it's like, how dare you come into this courtroom with no evidence and hearsay, and just like, you have no respect. Okay, if you don't respect me, respect the court. What is,
Right.
bruh, it was weird. So now
I think that
we have laws going through, to be passed because of what he said.
yes, and I think that a lot of people were uncomfortable that any of those cases that were dismissed on standing, that we should still look at those cases. Some of those very same cases came back. They were dismissed on standing, but even on evidence, there wasn't enough
Right.
there. So the defense from the Trump administration or the Trump campaign,
Mm-hmm.
their actual defense in court was, no, we don't have any evidence, but we would still like to have this case heard. That does not meet the standard of a court case.
What kind of precedent
It,
would
it
that
really
set?
doesn't.
What kind of precedent would be set if a judge actually listened to that? If a judge heard we have no evidence of what we're talking about whatsoever, but we still want to have a case, and he went yes, you would be in the history books as the
Right?
biggest dumbass that ever held a gavel in your life. Like,
Or they would just be a judge who's been paid off by somebody, which is highly likely.
yeah, but man, it would take a lot though for
That's the way things work.
yeah, it would take a lot though for
Yeah.
somebody to commit to hearing a case where it's just like you have zero evidence and you're in here talking to me. You're ruining my lunch. Like I could have had a
Yeah.
longer lunch. You know, a lot of a lot of these, and the weird thing about it is there are some states where a lot of these weird laws are looking favorably to being passed because they are in Republican
Yes.
controlled states. And it's
Hmm.
there are this same amount of laws, I suppose, being passed in Democrat controlled states, but there's no fear of them being passed because they're just going to be, thrown out or voted against or whatever. But you have a lot of states that are pushing through these voter suppression laws and voter suppression tactics. And I think it is not only reprehensible, I think it's moronic.
Hmm.
I think it is
Agreed.
absolutely dumb. And I would like your take on the number of these laws and where they're coming from and why.
So I think the Republicans have, they're doing what they always do, in which they call something a snappy little title that catches people's attention, regardless of what the underlying evidence actually is. So they're
Mm-hmm.
calling this election integrity. Election integrity is something, if you listen to those two words, everybody's going to say, yeah, we want election integrity.
Mm-hmm.
However, what they're actually doing is they're ensuring the whole groups of people who are eligible to vote, would vote, are not going to have the means to be able to vote after these laws are passed. It is voter suppression, point blank,
Mm-hmm.
no way around it. So, as we said earlier, I'm a woman, you're a black man. Until recently, our country said that we were two people who should not be able to vote.
Mm-hmm.
These are people that, even if they should vote, they have to clear a ton of hurdles to be able to vote. So, thankfully, we have constitutional amendments that say we are, in fact, worthy of voting. But we still have a lot of these hurdles that we have to jump through to be able to vote.
Mm-hmm.
So, what we see here again are just many hurdles that are being created by the Republican administration under the guise of election integrity. When I actually want to kind of jump to drawing the distinction between election integrity and voter suppression, because a lot of people hear those two phrases and they sound extremely different,
Yeah.
but there is a connector between the two. So the difference between election integrity and voter suppression is whether you give people a clear path to be able to vote while still abiding by these new laws. So if you give them a way to meet the requirements,
Mm-hmm.
if there's a new law, then it's not going to be a hurdle for people to have to cross. So if you need a new ID, how do we ensure that these people can afford it and have access to obtain it? If we are moving a polling location, how do we notify all the people, give them all the information that they need to get to their new location, and ensure that they have transportation to the new location?
That is
Are we
not what is
restricting voting
happening here.
hours? Right, exactly. So are we restricting voting hours? How do we ensure this is not hurting working families or moms or the elderly? Do we have an on site daycare so that moms can vote? Do we make it a national holiday so that people can fit those into restricted hours? That is the difference between passing a law that is supposed to have election integrity
Yeah.
built into it. But if you don't give a path for people to meet those new requirements, what you're ending up with is voter suppression, because a
Yeah.
ton of people have a new hurdle that they can't get over. They are eligible to vote, they would vote, but now they can't vote. So, a real life non voting example would be if there's road construction. Normally, if a road is blocked off, the city will put up a detour sign so that you know how to get around it and you would still get to your destination. So that's the way to have election integrity. You post detour signs, make sure everybody can get to their destination of voting that day. But in this case, of these new voter laws, it's like they're saying, okay, we'll block off this road and we'll only let people with pickup trucks through. For everybody else, you're on your own. No detour sign, no nothing. You're just on your own. So then we got to find our own way
Mm-hmm.
to get to our destination because they're not providing it for us. And then when people like you and I say, hey, this is creating an undue burden, and now I can't get to vote, then it's like the politicians, the Republicans, are saying, hey, all you got to do is buy a pickup truck and then you'll be able to
Yes,
vote,
yes.
man.
And that's the thing. Anytime there's an argument about voter registration and voter suppression, whatever, they're like, what's the problem? What is it? Is it so hard to just go get an ID? I have an ID. My father has an ID, whatever, whatever. And it's like, yeah, but they didn't close the BMVs where you live at the same time that they passed that law.
Right.
They did that in Jackson
Yes.
County. They've and so many recorded cases of that is they're doing the opposite of what you're suggesting. What you're suggesting is good faith,
Right.
which is hilarious in this country.
Yes.
But it's like no, I'm serious. It's like they passed the law requiring a specific type of ID, and then they close 32 BMVs or ID, issuing places in the state of Alabama
Yes.
5-6 years ago, if I remember correctly. Like this actually happened. They literally closed
Yes.
36 just to, and like all the other places of the people that they wanted, as Beth put it, with the pickup trucks, they didn't move any of those BMVs. So those are the same people just looking like,
Right.
why don't you just go to the BMV? It's like, where? In a neighboring county? Now I got to take off work. Now I got to like, wow.
Yes. And I never have another example in Mississippi. A lot of these southern states are really good at this, the whole voter integrity thing.
Yeah.
So they have a law in Mississippi. This is one of the most restrictive in the country. To vote absentee in Mississippi, the application for voting, the application itself has to be witnessed and signed by a notary. Do you know any notaries, or do you even know how to get a notary around here?
Yeah,
I don't.
you're
I'd
one.
have to go Google it, but it's not like, yeah, it's not like we all know how to get a notary or how to get in touch with one or at a moment's notice. So that's a barrier right there. The application to vote absentee
It's
has to be signed by a notary. Then it doesn't even stop there. When you get your
mhm.
ballot, it also has to be signed in front of a notary or a U.S. postal supervisor or a postmaster. That person has to administer an oath to you as you sign your ballot, fold it
Wow.
up, and then they issue an oath to you, and then you can sign and you can send in your ballot.
It sounded like it
This is absurd,
after you're done with that ballot, you got to roll it up and then seal it with fucking wax and your family's emblem and
right?
and then send
This
it off by carrier
stamp,
pigeon. Like what the fuck?
right, right. This is Mississippi absentee voting because they really. Let's think about the types of people who would have access to a notary. If this happened in our state,
Yeah.
I would be able to go find a notary. I would be able to work it around my work schedule because I have a flexible type of
Mhm.
schedule with my work that I can go take a break and come back, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Not everybody has access to these things. So I'd be lucky. I'd be able to get around these restrictions, but that's not the point. I'm the type of person that they would want to vote. So they wouldn't
See,
care
that's what I was
about those barriers for
that
me.
is what I was thinking about. So
Yeah.
there's a saying that is dear to people like me, and it's a very old saying. It goes, when you're loose translation, when you're digging a hole for quote for someone, dig two, one for that person and one for you, because
Yes.
oftentimes when you're laying a trap for someone, you lay it so well that you walk right into that fucking trap yourself. When they're
That's right.
like they're looking at these sections of the populations. All right, let me give you an example. Apparently this big push for black voters in Georgia was this thing on Sundays called Souls to the Polls. So people would go to church,
Souls to the polls.
yeah, they
Yep.
go to church, get their praise on, and then after that they, get in a bus or
Yes.
whatever, and all the souls we're gonna go vote. We're gonna go do our civic duty and vote. And so what Georgia decided we stopping all Sunday voting. That's it. It's all right. Now what
I saw that and
I,
I immediately started shaking my head like,
like
oh no.
yeah, so it's not it's so they can look at the demographics data and say, okay, a lot of black people are voting on Sunday. If we're trying to vote or suppress the black vote,
Mm-hmm.
then let's stop Sunday voting. But the issue is, it's data of that sort is not zero sum. It's not
Uh-huh.
100% black people that vote on Sunday. Do you have a bunch of
Right.
white people that go to various churches or have various things that they have to do in the week or whatever that vote on Sunday? So let's just say it's an overwhelming majority that black people vote on Sundays in Georgia. Let's say 85%.
Yeah.
You now have 15% of white and or other people who also vote on Sunday. In trying to make this trap for black people, you just screwed 15% of the people you want to vote for you. And I don't know why the
That's
people
right.
don't stop that. That doesn't make any, that's so dumb. It's like,
Because they have the means, to vote elsewhere on a
no, but
different
see,
day.
here's the thing. So, and this, I love using Georgia as an example because Stacey Abrams, shout out to Auntie Stacey, she did a tremendous
Oh
job with
yes.
that, right? So, what she did was she looked at
Yeah.
the math and she was just like, all right, they expect 100% of these people to succumb to this voter suppression tactic. And so we're going to lose
Mm-hmm.
85% of the black vote in this area. And we'll pay the cost of losing the 15% white. We'll eat that cost, no problem. And then Stacy comes in and Stacy goes, "Hey, all 85% of y'all, I got to wait for you guys to get around this. Follow me. I'm going over here." And then all 85% went. So all that happened was they lost their 15%. Jesus Christ.
Right.
God, I love
That's the
that
thing.
woman. She's so
I know,
good.
she's amazing. She is a queen. Oh my god. But she knows that you got to meet people where they are.
Yeah.
You've got to meet people where they are. We all have a world. that we wish were in existence where this kind of thing didn't happen. But the reality of the situation is very dire,
Yeah.
in that we can't stop Republicans from putting up restrictions for people voting. It's not going to stop as long as they're in power. The only way that it can stop is to get them out of power, but you can't get them out of power because they won't stop suppressing the vote.
You know what the funny part is, though?
So you got to beat them at their own
You know what
game.
the funny part is, though? They are, all right, they're like, I hate this analogy, but they're like the student in college that puts more effort into trying to cheat than just fucking studying.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
just study.
Yes.
If you would just study, you could just pass the exam and be done instead of all of these maneuvers, because they have no policy. Like, if you grab any conservative person right now and be like, all right, what is the biggest policy issue that Republicans are trying to push through to benefit people or government or whatever? Give it to me. Tell me what it is right now. Build a wall? Like, what they got nothing. So
I guess the crisis at the border is
oh, the brown people are coming to get us. Rawr. All right. Anyways, so they have no policy. And my thing is, instead of putting out 280 different documents of law, proposed law, to try to get passed to stop XYZ people from voting so that you can have a chance to win, how about all y'all get together in like a round table and be like, what kind of policy can we pass to benefit the people who are voting for us consistently, and they would be happy about it and live better lives and feel good about the fact that they elected us and we succeeded at this, and so our chances for being reelected would be higher. Let's go.
So you mean you want them to become Democrats? Because that's what Democrats do. They actually do hold roundtables and they ask what kind of laws would benefit people. Now, I don't agree with all the laws that they want to pass. But all I'm saying is, while the Republicans are out pushing rhetoric into the media that gets people riled up for no reason, the Democrats are the ones that are actually talking to voters and asking what's important to them, like $15 minimum wage and all that kind of shit.
That's the thing. I don't really want
to. If you want them to start thinking about policy, I don't know what to tell you.
I don't really want to turn this into like a Democrat versus Republican type of thing, but it is the Republicans that are pushing voter suppression, and that's what we're talking about. So there's no way to avoid it.
I actually have an example of Democrats doing it. I do have an example of Democrats doing it. So you're right. It's not just Republicans. Yeah. Yes.
Give me the example. What is it?
Do you want me to go there?
Go.
Okay. So it kind of goes into a different discussion about runoff elections.
Mm-hmm.
So you and I had a conversation. I don't remember when it was, but it was not on one of these podcasts. It was when we were trying to record one of these. So not a recorded segment, but we were talking about runoff elections. And I had mentioned that this was a form of voter suppression.
Yeah.
Which was something you'd never thought about before.
Oh, I remember. It was a Georgia runoff with Warnock and Ossoff.
Yeah, Georgia runoff. We were talking about that. And I said, why isn't anybody talking about the fact that runoff elections in itself is a way to suppress the black vote? So if you have a runoff election, what this means is, in that state, they have a rule that says if a candidate gets a majority of votes but doesn't reach 50%, you have to have a runoff between the person at the top and the next one running up.
And Georgia's one of them.
On its face, Georgia's one of them. On its face, they had a runoff election because they said, oh, well, the candidates that's supported by the black voters got a majority of the votes. Well, we want a do-over because we think that if we can combine the votes of the other runners up, that will surpass who the black people want. That is why they have runoff elections. And during that conversation, you had said, I'd be interested to know which states have this. Well, my friend, I do have the list.
Wow, this is good.
So runoff elections, for any time a candidate doesn't get above 50%.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Georgia's one of them. It's not on this list because they're actually doing this for a subset of votes. But I'm going by statewide.
Yeah.
Statewide elections in Alabama for the primaries, they have a runoff. Arkansas for the primaries, they have a runoff. Actually, let me put Georgia in here because, the general election, they do have a runoff. Louisiana for
Mm-hmm.
statewide
Yeah.
offices like governor. Mississippi in the general election. Do you see a pattern here?
I'm just waiting for you to get the
Oklahoma
Oklahoma.
in the
Come
primaries.
on. Thank you. What the fuck?
South
That's my
South
go-to for
Carolina in the
bullshit.
primaries. Yeah. So South Carolina in the primaries, Texas primaries. Now here's
Mm-hmm.
where the difference is, and this is where Democrats do this. Vermont for statewide offices like governor, and
Mm-hmm.
Washington state. So of that list of all those states, 2 of them are Democrat run, and the rest are usually Republican,
How many
with the exception of
man?
Georgia now.
Ain't no black
So
people live in
why did
Vermont.
I mention? But here's the thing: it's not a black white issue in that instance. It's the fact that the primary controlling party
Mm-hmm.
wants to suppress the opposing party from getting enough votes to win. So in states like Vermont, in Vermont and Washington state, if a Republican candidate gets the majority but not 50%, it's a chance for a do-over so that all the people that voted for the Democratic candidates can now combine forces and get more than 50% in the runoff election.
Oh, so
So
if
yes,
there's more
Democrats
than
do it too.
one for more than one nominee from each party, I guess it's not nominee at lower levels, huh? You can have like 3
No.
Democrats running for the same
Well,
position.
if it's a primary, if
Mm,
it's a primary, you can have multiple candidates. And then in the general, it's typically
yeah.
2 parties running, Democrat, Republican. But a lot of these states that I mentioned they had the runoffs in the primaries.
Mm,
So that there could be 2 candidates or there could be 16 candidates.
yeah.
It's a primary. So then that's supposed to whittle it down to 1. So really it's a way of keeping black people from holding office, because if you have a black candidate, they might get 47% of the vote.
Mm-hmm.
And then if it's a primary, especially, you could have 2 Republican candidates running against the black Democrat.
Yeah.
Black Democrat gets 47% overall, but they still don't win. It's a do-over. Now all the people that voted for the white candidates, they combine forces, and now they're more than 47%, so the black candidate doesn't win. That is exactly why it's voter suppression. But again, the Democrats do it too, because in Vermont and
Yeah.
Washington
Yeah.
state, they want the Democrats to remain in control. So they're going to say, if there's any candidate who's going to be coming up against the Democrat, we want them to just be, if they get
Mm-hmm.
not a majority, but
close
so
to
they don't
it.
get 50%, but they get more than everybody else. We don't want the Republican to win, so we'll just combine forces, all the Democrats, and run against him again. It's voter suppression. The voters chose a winner, point blank. They chose a winner,
Mm-hmm.
and the state says, we
That's
don't
the
like
thing.
who you chose, so we're gonna do a do-over.
We had another podcast recently, and I think it was the one about the Stimmy bill. And at the end, you were saying that people just need to get informed, and if they whatever ID that they need to go get it right now. Don't wait until the election time or
Just go
election
get
year or
it
whatever.
now.
Because that's the thing. You can try to suppress the vote all you want, but like I said before, when you're digging a hole, dig two, because it's gonna affect everyone in some way. So the
Yes.
thing, and I go back to Stacey Abrams being so awesome. It's like you can't suppress people who've decided to be resilient. It's impossible,
Yes.
because
Amen to that.
if you have left a way for me to vote, I got it. As the culture would say, I bet. All right, cool, man. Whatever. Set
Yep.
your laws. Oh, I got to get the ID 3 weeks before voting. No problem. I set my alarm. That's all
Yep.
it is.
That's the thing. A lot of people don't know how to do that. And that's why it's important for organizers to be part of the discussion and say, okay, let's organize these groups to get what they need. And that's why I say start now.
Yeah.
If there's some nationwide ID requirement that comes out, I say, okay, not what I want to do, but I will do it. And I will take swarms of people with me to do it too.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to require this,
Yeah.
then I'm going to do it.
Hey,
Reluctantly.
the
But
stuff that you're
yeah.
talking about has been attacked by voter suppression. In that same goddamn state of Georgia, they made it illegal for you to like drive a bus to like a nursing home and like take 60, however many
Yes.
people can fit on a bus, 30, 35 people to a polling station, have them vote, and then bus them back. Apparently that's illegal.
Yep.
Dude, these people just don't want people to vote. And you know what? Hey,
yes.
the funny thing is, like I said, I got some ideas for the opposite of that, and I might just, you know what? We'll just add that to the extended footage in Patreon. You're gonna love it because there's a way to fix this completely in every country in the world. It's because
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
and the premise is very simple. More people have smartphones than have drinking water. Sad statistic, very sad statistic. But voting through smartphones. Anyways, that's off topic. I'm gonna get to it later. You're gonna be like, oh wow, this is so easy. And I'm like, yeah, it's already done.
Yeah.
So most ridiculous of this voter suppression laws that you've heard of. I want to find out which one you think is the most ridiculous or most egregious. I don't get to use that word often in a sentence. I'm happy
Does it
with
have to be one of the new laws that are coming out, or can it be just a law in existence?
as long as it's in existence. If it's already struck down, we can't use it. So, which is the most ridiculous that you heard?
No, I think the one that I recited earlier from Mississippi with the 2 notaries, that is just the biggest.
Mhm.
Oh my God. Like, that's so fucking stupid. Oh my God. So stupid.
So,
There's no reason that somebody should have to have 2 different notaries in order to prove who they are just so they can vote by mail.
oh, and not only that, it's two different, not just 2 notarizations, 2 different notaries.
Yeah.
Wow, y'all wild. In Mississippi got
Exactly.
problems.
That's the worst.
That's Mississippi or Alabama?
It is the worst.
Mississippi.
Mississippi.
Okay. So
Yep.
just I'm not telling you the most ridiculous one I've heard yet. Just to follow up with what you're saying, there's a similar one in Georgia. Because I was looking through all of them trying to find which one was most ridiculous since I was planning on asking you. But there's one in Georgia that's simple, similar to that one in Mississippi, where if you're doing absentee ballot, you have to send in 2 different photocopies of your state ID and like social security and whatever. So state ID because it has a picture. So the first time, like when you're filing, when you send in, it's like a back and forth. It's like a relay walkie-talkie system. So you send in this bunch of information, right? And then they verify it and send you the ballot. And then you fill out the ballot, and then you have to go photocopy your ID and whatever again, and then put that all together and then send it back to them, and then they'll count your ballot if your signature is perfect and match what they have on file for your signature. That's also another one added into that. But that's the thing. So now you're gonna have to find 2 photocopying services. Like, who have a photocopier inside their house?
No, I mean, some rich families might, but
no,
not
where
the
you walk
Joe
in,
Schmo.
where you walk in and the office is on the left. Yeah, it might have a copy machine
with the French doors.
yeah. But that's the thing. It's like so they've made it harder for any of the people who they want to
Regular
vote
person.
for them, and by trying to make it hard for the people who they assume won't vote for them. And I think that's absolutely ridiculous.
Right.
So the most ridiculous one I saw, which I can't even I've struggled with trying to figure out how to make it make sense. Like, if it was a conservative talking point, how could they sell it to me as making sense? In Georgia,
I'm intrigued.
It is now a misdemeanor if you are caught giving water or food to anybody who is standing in the line to vote. Straight up.
With all the problems we have in this world, that's the one that they want to go with. They want to make it a misdemeanor to give food or water to somebody standing in line.
Dude, it sounds like some shit out the Constitution.
Wow.
It sounds like, if you've given food or aid to the enemy. You know what I mean? If you've given comfort, food, or aid to the enemy, you will have a misdemeanor.
You're tired, you're poor.
Yeah, no.
The Lady Liberty's got to change.
Oh,
got to change what she says on her little bronze statue.
So I'm thinking about all of these stupid ways where, like, let's say, you pull up to the thing and your family's there, and you got, Papa or Daddy in the line, and he's holding the line for Papa people, whatever, and you guys are in the car because there's air conditioning, lines moving slowly, whatever. You're just like, yo, bring this bottle of water for Dad. And he's like, all right, cool. Son runs out there. Hey, Dad. He's like, whoa, officer pulls up. Bloop, bloop, bloop. Hey, is that a bottle of water? You're under arrest, sir, for violation of, state code, whatever the fuck. Like, bruh, water? in America, and it's so
There's only
funny.
one element that you missed in that story. There's only one element you missed.
Which-
Guns drawn
Gun-
with those officers when they show up.
Man.
Guns drawn.
Because it's like you get this whole thing that's sold like, oh, this is the land of the free, and whatever. You are not free in Georgia to give
Right.
somebody a bottle of water in the line if they're voting. Like, what kind of freedom? What? That's insane. I can't.
And let's talk about the reason that that's happening. To me, the most egregious thing is that they're not trying to address the root cause of what's requiring people to need food and water. So everybody's like, let's just make it a misdemeanor so that they can't give food and water. Well, why are people standing in line for 8 fucking hours trying to vote?
Yeah.
Because they keep closing down polling locations, closing down BMVs, making it impossible for people to be able to get in and out of voting easily. So they stand in line for 8 to 10 hours, and yes, they're going to be hungry, they're going to be tired, they're going to be thirsty.
Well, now,
and so rather what they would like to say,
illegal.
well, now it's illegal. So rather than addressing why lines are long in the first place, they're going to make stupid laws based on long lines.
Man,
doesn't make any sense to me. That's stupid. That's a good choice for the stupidest laws.
The most ridiculous. All right, so
Beth, this makes me so angry.
I know, I can tell.
Yes.
But before you get angry, because we're trying to have a good time. That's the whole point of this. We're having a good time. We got drinks. We got politics.
I know.
Before things start to get out of hand, can you help by telling us what to do to get around all of these suppressive laws?
Yes. So we were briefly talking offline about HR1 because that's really going to be the fix. I mentioned earlier the difference between election integrity and voter suppression is whether you give people a clear path to meet these new requirements without a burden. So HR1, which is called, the short title is the For the People Act of 2021. I'm reading this off my phone, so that's why I'm looking down right now. But this is a bill that has passed the House, waiting in the Senate. But it's a method of trying to address some of these issues with voting laws and registration and all that kind of stuff to make it feasible to have voter integrity. So we know that these laws are being passed in certain states because, again, this is a federal law. This bill is a federal act, but it has to deal with the repercussions of 50 different state laws that are impacting people's ability to vote. So HR1 would address things like requiring the availability of internet for people to be able to register to vote. So if we're going to have laws in 50 different states that are going to make it harder for people to register, let's remove one of those barriers right now. If you can register online, let's make sure everybody has internet access. The provision of election information by electronic mail to individuals registered to vote. So making sure that if you are registered, that you have an email sent to you with all of your information, confirming that you're registered, making sure that you know where you're supposed to go. I think that's pretty good. Prohibiting states from requiring applicants to provide more than the last 4 digits of their social security number. It says, hey, 50 different states. There's no reason that you should require more than just the last 4 digits. You know what the full number is. So if you're going to require those digits, don't do something that's egregious. Report on any data that's collected of these people who are registering. Permitting your voter registration application to form to serve as an application for an absentee ballot. So if you're registering to vote, you can also be registering for an absentee ballot at the same time. So again, this is just the means to bridge that gap to make sure that if these laws are going into place, those laws are not going to overstep their bounds into voter suppression. I think it's a pretty good measure. I haven't read the whole thing all the way through. That's usually my thing, but I haven't done it in this case. But I think that's a good way for us to get to the place of making sure that if a new law is enacted, that it's not going to create a hurdle for the average voter and negatively impact people of color.
And as we always say, read the bill. You're not going to know what's in it.
Read the bill.
Or if you like it or not.
We will link it up.
You read the bill. So Beth, how did these
We
people
will
reach
link it
us?
up. All right, so you can reach us on Facebook or Instagram at mixed.politics, on Twitter at mixedpolitics1, or you can send us an email at mixedpoliticspod@gmail.com. And we will have show notes that will have all these things there for you. I will also link up the HR1 so you can begin to read the whole thing. And we also have a Patreon. I'm going to let Stainy tell you about that.
We have a Patreon, and we have had a lot of, by our standards, subscribers, and we appreciate you all. We had a recent new subscriber. I think the newest is Rayon Ralston, big time lawyer out of California. Want to shout him out and
Woo!
thank him for
Rayan.
supporting our channel. Um, you can find us at
Very nice. Thank you
patreon.com
so
slash
much.
mixed politics. And there's a lot of stuff there for you. There's going to be extra footage of this show, just like there are of all the other shows that we've done. Wow, we're at 5, so 6 in total. That's crazy. So there's bonus footage, there's extra footage, there's bloopers, there's stuff.
Oh,
There's
there's
fun
fun
stuff,
stuff. You
and
might
there's
even get
also,
to hear about my first vaccine.
yeah, there's all of that, and there's merch. So depending on the level that you sponsor us at, we will send you a nice hoodie like this, or Beth can show you her shirt.
Merch.
Hey,
Yes.
it's hot. So
There
you
you
can get
are.
one. You can get one of the apes like I'm
Thanks.
wearing, sent to you, or you can be a member of our show and have one of these panels instead of just us two. You'll be right next to us over there or over here, or have dinner and drinks with us and go crazy. Maybe we'll make one of these podcasts together, a whole blooper reel. But that's where you can
Yes.
find us,
That'd be awesome.
patreon.com/mixed politics. So all you apes that have stuck it out so far, we thank you for being here with us, and we appreciate you, we love you, and we love the feedback. Man, I'm learning so much about myself and this and everything. So keep them coming, negative and positive. I
Yes.
like the haters too, because if you ain't got no haters, you
Yes.
ain't popping. So I want to pop. Are you gonna cheers with your
Sounds
water?
good. Yeah, well, so here's my little water container here. It's a Christmas tumbler. My friend Jen made this, so
I drank for 2
this is
people.
just the
All
only
right,
one I had
let's
available,
go.
so yes.
3, 2, 1, and cheers. I think we survived that. We had a lot of material.